bad rash in the middle of summer. I'm back. Wow, it looks a whole lot brighter on the screen than it does outside. I guess I have minimal night vision capabilities or something. I prefer to drive at night. I prefer to film at night. I picked up a load, a rather strenuous pain in the rear end load out of Dearborn, Michigan, and I'm en route to Liberty, Missouri, which is a subsidiary of Kansas City. I am currently on Highway 55 southbound. I still think I'm in Illinois. Yeah, I'm going towards Springfield, and I'm going to turn out west. I hit an insane amount of delays getting out of Michigan. There was way more traffic on 94 than I've ever experienced in the past. I don't know why. They had a couple construction sites, and the construction sites pitched down to one lane, which apparently is confusing to people. And it just backed us up forever waiting to get through. And then you'd get out, and there would be a car on the side of the road, and the whole highway would have to stop to look at it, I guess. And then get going again, and then another traffic. I got caught in Chicago rush hour and whatnot. But I'm out here driving now. For anybody just jumping on 55 south in Illinois, headed towards Springfield, but turning off before that, cutting across Missouri towards Kansas, Liberty, Missouri. And again, I like broadcasting at night. I like when it's dark, and this helps me stay awake, to be honest with you. That's why I like doing this. I got a whole lot of nobody listening right now. Some people jumped on and jumped off. Hold on. This is the time I'd like to be playing music, but I don't have any music to play. At one point, I was able to get music going with Livestream, and that was weeks ago, and I, for the life of me, can't get it to come back, so I don't know what I'm doing wrong. When I get home, we're going to figure this one out. I've been out of the Army for about a little more than 30 years, and the whole world has changed in that time. But back when I was in the missile systems we messed with, and the ones I'm familiar with, which the one that I flew an AH-1 Cobra attack helicopter, and our primary anti-tank weapon was a TOW missile. TOW stands for Tube-Launched Optically Tracked Wire-Guided. The original TOW missile came online. Hold on a second here. Hello, sir. Have you eaten something? Yes, Mr. Sam. As a matter of fact, I did. I'm racing the clock trying to get to this delivery before they close receiving, which is supposedly open at 2 in the morning. And I got gas, and I ran across the street to the Taco Death. And I walked in, there was like 20 people in the store, which never see more than 1 or 2 people in there, and I stood there for the better part of 20 minutes waiting on my order. I have in my entire life never been to a Taco Death that was that slow. And there's other people standing there, they're all looking at each other going, what are these guys back here? They had a full crew and everything. Real frustrating. But yes, now I'm getting ready to blast out across space. I ate, and I've got a few more hours to go to get to my destination, Liberty, Missouri, which is just outside Kansas City. And I am, like I said, I'm southbound on 55 right now. Gonna hit Springfield, and I go west across Missouri on my favorite road. It's in the middle of nowhere, and there's nobody out there. The screen right now is way more lit than it is out looking out the windows. I don't know why it does that. That's weird. But anyway, I flew the Cobra attack helicopter when I was in the Army, and our primary anti-tank weapon was the TOW, TOW, which again stands for Tube-Launched Optically Tracked Wire-Guided. That's literally how, and I'll explain how that works. But the original TOW system went in inventory in 1970. So if you do the math, that thing's been around a long, long time there. It's gone through a variation of changes over the years. They've upgraded it and made extra systems to it. The particular TOW that I used was called the TOW 2 Alpha. And it had an extended range on it. The original would go 3,000 meters, and the ones that I got to shoot went 2,750 meters. And I was watching something on YouTube, my favorite place, about the Ukraine war, and I watched a night shot, and I'll explain in a minute, but just by the signature of the fire and watching it, I knew that it was a TOW. So the TOWs are still being used. Obviously the helicopters are. But the firing sequence of a TOW missile, ready for this? Oop, I got something on here. Hold on a second. I gotta read that. Was advanced technology? Yeah, it was. It was advanced at the time. And the TOW, I mean, compared to the new stuff, the TOW missile's ancient, but it still does the job. So here's how it works. It's a tube, and you have a launcher. The launcher could be the aircraft, which at this point I don't think there's any aircraft that have these. Cobra had it, but I don't even know if they use them anymore. You have a ground mount, like a tripod. You can put it on the ground, you can put it on top of a building, you can go anywhere you want. You've seen them on Humvees. They have like a little turret on top, and they'll attach the missile system. And the Bradley fighting vehicle, you'll see them over in Ukraine. They're using them, and the TOW is attached to the side of the turret. It's not its primary weapon. The TOW is the 25 millimeter Bushmaster is its primary shoot 'em up bang bang. But if you look at a Bradley pointing the same way you're looking, on the right side there's a box, and it flips up, kind of like a door handle on a car. Like you pick up the door handle, that's how it lifts up that way, and you fire from that position. And the way the missile works, and you can watch this on TV and you can actually see what it's doing. You line up on your target that you're gonna fire on, and you pull the trigger, and what happens is an electrical shock hits a CO2 bottle, like in a pellet gun, and it pops the CO2 and it dumps all the gas into a gyro, a balancing gyro, and it spins it to 42,000 RPM, and from there it starts to slowly slow itself down, but it's long enough for what you need. So you pull the trigger, pop, whirl, you'll hear the whirl, and then you have a launch motor that barfs the missile out of the tube. It throws it forward. And then once it gets a little bit of distance, the flight motor ignites. The flight motor, the exhaust ports are not on the back of the missile. They're towards the back, on the sides, kind of pointed outward at an angle so as to not block the back of the missile, because there is an infrared light. And if you really see this, if you watch a TOW missile fire, like a video of one, and what happens is the launch motor throws it out in front of the sights. The little mini computer captures that red light. So if you watch a video like on YouTube, TOW missile firing, it'll fire, you'll see a blur of exhaust gas as the missile cuts in front of the sights, and you see that little light, and then it'll cut back the other way, and then it'll cut back like a third time, and then it disappears. The missile accelerates to a speed of Mach 0.98. It takes 1.5 seconds, and then it shuts off and it glides. And from that point, you are looking through the sight, guiding it. It literally, they say wire guided, it literally has 2 copper wires attached to it as it comes out of the launcher. Think of like grandma has for doing her sewing. That's what it looks like. 3,750 meters of that times 2. So if you're in a cockpit of an aircraft and you fire the TOW and you look down, you can actually see this little wire unreeling as it comes out real fast. And it will fire across the battlefield, and when it detonates or times out, it singes it and cuts it so it doesn't get tangled up in the aircraft or the airframe. Now, the missile flies a maximum range on the missile, again, is the ones that I fired. Ooh, look on the horizon. You can see the flashing lights to the left and right. Do you see that? That is windmills. Those are those giant windmills. Okay, we're going to turn towards them. This is cool. You'll be able to see this here in a few minutes really well. See on the horizon on the left? That's the top of the windmills. We're going to turn that direction here in a moment. That's kind of cool. Anyway, the missile can punch through 27.5 inches of armor, and there is literally nothing out there that has armor that thick. So it's not really much of an issue. Maximum distance flight of 3,750 meters takes 21.5 seconds of flight time. If it flies 23 seconds without hitting anything, it'll self-detonate. So it's got like a fail-safe system. When I was watching a video here just recently, it was thermal sights on a drone, which I didn't know they put thermal sights on drones, and it was hovering over an area in Ukraine. And they had a little arrow, and they said, this is a Bradley, and way down this mile was just a little arrow that said, this is a Russian tank. And he fired the missile, he fired the TOW, because I watched it pop out of the tube. You could see the glow of the exhaust as it accelerates, and then the missile shut off. Then it glides down to the end and it hit the tank, the Russian tank, and it went fooyah. And I knew it was because of its flight emblem, the fact that it glowed for that second and a half and then shut off and it became invisible. And I was like, I know what it's doing. So that missile has been out there for, 55 years, and it's still working. And the launcher on the Bradley, there's 2 shots in that launcher. And after your second shot, you can turn the turret to a certain angle, and a guy behind you in the crew compartment can pop open a door and stand up and reload the launcher, and you can go back to firing again. You can add more to it, so it's not like you're out of bullets at that point. So that's kind of an interesting reload. And comparatively speaking, back 30 years ago when I was playing Army, the service shot was $5,000 for one of those missiles. So today it's probably 15 per shot, compared to a Javelin, which is 175,000. You know, I mean, so dollar for dollar, you blow up a $2 million tank with a $15,000 missile. You're pretty much winning that mixture. And they have been in production for so long that other countries now make them, and they're available. TOW missiles available on the marketplace out there for weapons dealers and whatnot. Good simple system, requires a battery. I've seen the ground mount versions. Tripod, they plug it into some kind of box, and I don't know what the box does, but they have to plug it into some power source, and then Pop World does its job. The second missile I want to chew your ear off about is the Stinger. Remember that? The Stinger anti-aircraft missile? I've never seen one up close. I understand their capabilities. I know what they can and cannot do. And I have one funny story that has to do with that system. When I was in flight school in the Army, it was 89 and 90, they took us into, I made a video about this a long time ago. I talked about it somewhere in my playlist, I don't remember where. But 1989, 1990, we're helicopter guys. And they took us into a classroom, and they locked the door, and they checked IDs to make sure everybody that was supposed to be in the room was in the room. And they brought out old VHS tapes, remember those? And they popped a video in, and they were talking about the Stinger missile, which was a new thing in the early 80s. So this is the late 80s. So now the Stinger's been around for forever. And it was the first generation Stinger, and they were showing how it worked. And the missile, when you're on a battlefield and there's explosions going off and things popping all around you, you can't necessarily hear. So the way this missile is designed is if you hold it up to your face, there's a piece that touches your cheek. And when the missile is toning and making its sounds, it actually uses your head as a I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, a ringtone. Your whole head, your skull basically rings. So here without your ears hearing. Red, and it seeks the heat of an engine. There's a lot of people talking about diverting the exhaust. Well, the exhaust is 700-800 degrees. The engine is more like 4,000. So that's not gonna work. So these missiles were developed, and somebody thought they were going to be too hard to operate, and they wanted to test them out. So they took them to they got the Afghanis trained up, and they put. So basically, how that works is you have the original Stinger missile has a canister. It looks like a coffee can, and the way they would do it back then is you twist it, and you hold it in your hand. There's your target. You put the can underneath the missile, and you twist it, and it would puncture this bottle of Freon or something, and it would cool the sights. And it was only good for like 40 seconds. After 40 seconds, the coolant would fail, and it wasn't usable. I guess you had to get a new bottle or something. Nowadays, they don't do the screw-in thing. It's just a handle you pull and it pops the bottle and it cools it. But basically, you point the missile, you hit the coolant, there's a trigger, and then when the missile says, I'm locked on, you pull the trigger, there's a launch, the missile jumps out of the tube, and it accelerates to like Mach 0.5, and it's good for like 15,000 feet. It does have some limits that is classified. I can't talk about that, but it does have some limitations. But all around, it's a really good system. It's a tiny warhead, and what it does is it goes towards that heat, and when it gets close enough to it, it detonates like a bomb, and it sends out little bits of shrapnel. And turbine engines don't like shrapnel. You get one little piece of metal in a turbine engine and it chews it up because they're super, super precise. And it's not going to make an aircraft, blow to pieces, but it is going to blow the motor out of it. And, aircraft without an engine doesn't last long. What was interesting about this thing they were showing us, these videotapes in this classroom, is our flight class consisted of a weird combination of people. And in the 80s, they used to advertise this thing on TV about the Army. They say, wow, you could go from high school to flight school. And that had happened, but it was extremely rare. And people kicked and clawed and fought to get into flight school. And about 98% of those people that were there were in the Army. They transitioned to flight school from somewhere else. You didn't have, there was one guy I can think of that was just off the streets and went through basic training and then came in. Just that one guy, Newsom was his last name. Newcomb. I don't remember his first name. But that was, so it was unusual. So you had people from different walks of life, which I should say, within the military. Hey, Eric, what's going on? Talking about missile systems. And the guys in our flight class had been around the block. We had, I was from armor. I came from being a tanker. And we had guys that were infantry. We had mechanics. One guy was an air traffic controller. One dude was a band member, a band leader, the guy with the big stick that would, dance around in front of the band, the Army band, which I thought was kind of funny. And we had a couple of guys that were Green Berets in our class. And something a lot of the general population doesn't know about the Green Berets is they think they're these guys that run around behind enemy lines and, I don't eat people or something. What they actually do is train people. They go behind the lines, set up like a resistance army, and train them to go fight. That's kind of their mission. So we had a couple of Green Berets in our class that were going through flight school. And while we're watching this tape, this video that was shot in Afghanistan, that's why it was classified, there's two civilians standing with the missile, which comes in like a big, heavy armored suitcase. And there was a guy standing there talking, and the missile's open, and there's a guy he's dressed like a casual civilian. This is a white dude. The one's facing the camera, one's facing away from the camera. And the guy's standing there talking, and he's got a stick, and he's pointing at components of the missile, and the local yokels are looking down at it, and they don't know what it is. They don't understand. It's, it's like they're clueless. So he's pointing and talking at this missile in a translator. And he's like, okay, it does this, it does that, it does this, it does that. And then you hear somebody start yelling. And the camera looks around. Everybody starts running for cover. And what happens is one of those Soviet Mi-24, the Hind D helicopters, is flying in the area. And everybody's running for cover to get away from it. And the camera kind of bobbles around, and it goes over, and it gets behind a rock, and it's poking up and watching. And then the camera turns back to the two guys. Let's see here. David Dogs. Hey, what's up? The camera turns back, and the second civilian guy has the missile on his shoulder and fires it almost parallel, and it flies not very far, and for some reason the missile hit the front of the helicopter as it's flying by, and the entire front end of the aircraft just disappears, and it pitches nose high and disappears out of sight. It falls out of sight, and you see a fireball and smoke come up. And then the camera stands up, is looking around, and these dudes run over to this little stash of missiles, and they start grabbing at the boxes. They don't know how to use it, they just know what it can do. And these two civilian guys have their sticks and are actually hitting these guys with the sticks to get them to leave them alone because they don't know how to operate these. Somewhere in the middle of this stick beating, somebody in the class says, and I quote, "Hey, Howie, isn't that you?" One of the dudes in the class is the guy that shot the missile in the video. And he's sitting like 2 doors down from me, like 2 seats down from me. And everybody looks, the guy stops the tape, flips the light on, everybody turns and looks. And Howie's got, his eyes are really big. He's kind of looking around going, we got a kick out of that. Having him in there. One other thing Howie did that I thought was interesting is they used to have what's called, whoa, we got some lightning going on. I think we're going to be heading towards that here pretty soon. That's cool. We had a, let's see here. Yeah, this road's beautiful. There was roads in Michigan were really rough today. And my suspension is circling the drain. I'm going to drop this off and I'm going to head home. And I've already ordered the parts. I got to get my struts replaced in the front. They're starting to rattle. Yeah, I like driving at night. This is my favorite time. But when I was in flight school, they had, back then, this is 89, 90, they had, our classes were like 2 weeks apart. They would start a new class. So there was something like 800 people at any given moment going through flight school. And every once in a while, somebody would decide we're going to have a whole flight school. All of them were going to get together and go on a big run, big jog in the morning. Like, okay, yeah, whatever. So we'd show up at this field. Everybody's standing out there in formation. And Howie's in our class. Howie's in the front row. And the Army has this weird thing about, for reveille in the morning, they like to fire a cannon if they can. If there's somebody around, something going on, they'll fire a blank, big loud cannon. But we're standing, everybody's out there standing at attention. And boom, the cannon goes off, over here behind us somewhere. And we're all standing at attention, no one's moving. Howie hit the ground. And in my entire life, up to that point and since, I have never seen a human being move that fast. I mean, it is not physically possible to hit the ground that fast. And Howie hit the ground, and Howie jumped back up again. And every single person saw him do it, nobody said a word. Everybody knows why, though, because he's been close enough to it. We have potholes in Alaska until you hit South Range. Yeah, the last time I was in Alaska, oh God, it was in the 80s. And I remember the roads were rough, and it's the terrain. I get that. The terrain up there, and the road going up to Prudhoe Bay, they don't even pave it. They just pour gravel and just replace the gravel constantly. And I remember everybody's car was dirty. And I said, don't people wash their cars up here? And I said, no. What's the point? It's going to be dirty 5 minutes after you get in it, so nobody lost any sleep over it. Sam, I just saw today's topic is missile system. Heck yeah. I have experience with the TOW missile. I am familiar with the Stinger anti-aircraft. Let's see. It's been around forever. They have in Vietnam, it's called a LAW, L-A-W. And people have a tendency to call it a LAW rocket, but LAW means light anti-tank weapon. It's a fiberglass disposable system. You can pull pins, and then you grab the ends and pull it apart, and it just snaps out, and you fire it. It's to knock holes in bunkers and stuff like that, and not really armored vehicles, but just hard targets. Did you ever go to the Bluebird 11 miles south of Anchorage? Oh, dude, that was so long ago. I have no memory of anything. I have been in, we went Ketchikan, Juneau, Sitka, or Sitka, Juneau, and we were in Anchorage, around that area, but honestly, I don't remember much about it. I remember Ketchikan the most, but dude, that was so long ago, I don't remember it. My plan here in the next few months, I want to take the wifey poo on a cruise, and I want to go, if I can, I want to take a one-way cruise from Seattle to Anchorage and go up the fjords and spend a few days in Anchorage running around. That's kind of the plan. I got to find a cruise that goes from Seattle to Anchorage one way, and I got to find one. But yeah, I do want to go up there and play around. I am very fond of cold weather. Yes, I did. Chicken Alaska. That I like the name of. I just like the name. Wait a minute, I gotta come over here. Like I said, in West Virginia, they have a town named Odd, West Virginia, and the town next to where I live is called Cut and Shoot, Texas. Nothing going on there. Yeah, I did see Chicken Alaska. That's I love names that are weird like that. I was up in Wisconsin here, a week and a half ago. I don't remember anymore. And they give a town a three-word name town. It was Prairie du Chien, Chein, 3 words, Prairie du Chien. Why do you have to give a town a name like that? Can't you just give it something you can pronounce, like, Taylor, something a little more usable? Whoa, more lightning. This is kind of cool, driving at night, because you can see this. I got lightning off to my right here, and that is the direction we're going to be turning eventually. According to my peeps, there's a lot of weather in their neck of the woods. Well, the latest system they're using, and it's going on in Ukraine, is called the Javelin missile, which I had never heard of. And I think it's infrared, and it comes in 2 options. You can direct fire or overhead fire. And if you watch, they're holding it and they're looking through it, but the launcher is actually pointed upward. And they lock on, pull the trigger, and the missile jumps up in the air and flies over the target and fires a shaped charge straight down. Because tanks are heavy and they got to save weight where they can, and where they save it is on the top, because they don't have a lot of things attacking it from overhead. Well, that's all different now. By some pug guy, Chicken Alaska. Yeah, I mean, if you can get away with giving it a cool name like that, I say go for it. So that's the new thing, is the javelin, and I guess they're calling it that because think about a javelin toss. You throw it up in the air and it comes down. And I watched a video, again, early on in that war. There was a Russian helicopter hovering over some trees, and they didn't have anything they could get at it with, and a dude shot it with a javelin. It literally flew over it and shot the projectile down from above and fireballed it. And I thought, oh, that was a cool shot. Yeah, that's a rough business to be in over there. I'm a little surprised that war's gone on this long. The Bradley fighting vehicle over there is doing a good job, and again, it's an old piece of equipment, but it's doing its job. They sent over a handful of tanks, and it's not, either side is employing tanks properly. You don't throw them into battle piecemeal, where they drive into a kill area and they drive around a little bit and then they get blown up and then everybody falls back. That's not how you use armor. Armor is an offensive weapon. And if you're on the offense and you're here and you want to go there, I'm just making up numbers, 40 miles from here, you throw every piece of armor you have and you charge through the enemy. They're going to take losses, and then you just keep on going to the objective, and once you get past those lines, you'll start running into the supply area, and you'll start running into the artillery, and you'll start tearing up the stuff in the rear, and then your enemy's going to be in confusion trying to patch the holes and fix stuff. But that's not what they're doing. This war, here says, I'm sitting in Unalakleet, Alaska. Wow. Yeah, I really want to go up there. But what the Ukrainians and the Russians are doing is their lines are stabilized. So in between them, they have minefields and kill zones and pre-registered artillery and dug-in anti-tank equipment, and they just send their armor out into a kill zone to shoot up the other side, and they get shot to pieces because it's stationary. That's not how you use tanks. And these guys don't get that over there. And the Russians are getting chewed up little by little. It's attrition, and it seems that the Russians are losing because they've got thousands of old tanks sitting in these depots that have been sitting out in the weather, and they've been cleaning them up enough to get them into the battle. And they're taking satellite photos of these old depots of tanks from up to 50 years ago, and they're almost empty. And it's silly. they're letting themselves get chewed up over there, and their military's just going away, and the Russians thought they were the big bad boy on the block, and they're turning into being a paper tiger, is what they were showing. Absolutely ridiculous over there. Well, that's my whiz bang about missile systems that I've messed with. Yeah, that's about it. It's just something that popped into my head. I just want to rattle on. Does anybody have anything? It says, heard that United Nations is going to help Ukraine. A lot of countries in the NATO countries have been shipping him stuff, but at the point it becomes a NATO war, that's a whole. The United Nations isn't a military organization. The United Nations is where all the nations of the world meet. It's like the teachers' lounge in school. All the teachers meet there. All the natures they can have a United Nations resolution. Everybody votes on it, but only like 5 countries' votes actually matter. But I don't know what they're going to do. They do sanctions. I know. I don't know what country it was now. It might have been Poland. Poland or Sweden. Somebody just gave the Ukrainians 50 more M1 tanks, the older ones. You've got the original M1, which I crewed, which had the 105 cannon, and then you got the M1 A1, A2, A3, which are all 120 millimeter guns. And they gave them their M1A1s, and they're like 50 of them, I guess. And so they're putting more armor out there for them. Poland, that's it. You're right, Poland gave those vehicles. But the M1 that I crewed, the M1 tank, had the 105 millimeter cannon. It's a rifled round. It spins. And the 120 is a smoothbore. It has fins. It's fin stabilized. And the difference is 5,000 feet per second versus 7,000 feet per second. It's got a pretty big difference in the firepower. And the slug, the anti-tank round coming out of the 105 or the 120. Sorry, I'm watching my GPS here, watching the road. The round, if you've ever watched a modern tank battle, the tank, you fire your gun, the round hits the tank and it flashes. Not like a flash bulb, it just goes poof right in front of your face. And that depleted uranium slug hits the tank, goes through it, that little tiny hole, and then it comes out the other side, and it just keeps on going. It's a Russian-made tank. It's going to go all the way through it. It's in a blink of an eye, but it goes through it, it goes out the other side. And not to be overly graphic, but anything alive in that tank is going to go out that hole with it, whether it wants to or not. It's a vacuum it causes. And then a split second later, there's the overpressurization, and then it blows up. The Soviet-designed Russian tanks, the ammunition is underneath the crew on a rotary rack. So when something goes boom in the ammunition compartment, the turret on top is not attached. You pick up a Russian tank and turn it upside down, the turret falls off. There's nothing holding it on but gravity. That's why when it detonates, that turret goes into a low Earth orbit. The American-made tank, the M1 tank, the turret is attached, and the ammunition in the back of the turret behind an armored door. You have a knee switch. You pop the knee switch, door opens up. You grab your round, you let go of the knee switch, door slams shut. And on top of the turret, back there in the rear, you have blow-off panels. It's heavy armor, but there's only 4 bolts. So if there's a detonation of the ammunition compartment, the explosion goes up. It's a path of least resistance. Let's see what's going on up here. I'm sorry I'm having to watch the road. And the explosion will go up, and if you watch any of the videos when one of those Russian tanks get hit, it fireballs, and it's in some cases it's gone. It just disappears under the boom. Whereas the M1 tank, or the Western-made tanks, the crew gets out and runs whichever direction. More times than not, they get out, they get away. And you can build a tank pretty fast if you have a good system. You can't build a person any faster than nature allows it. So your crew is important. The armor itself you can replace. And at this point, I think the Russians have lost a vast majority of their trained tankers, because they've lost, I've read something like 7,000 vehicles over there. Some crazy number. Sorry. If I was in, the thing about war planning is they train for it, they plan for it. They have a war college here in the United States, but you come up with a game plan. Hold on a sec here. Speaking of Southeast Alaska, I had a free hotel room. How did you pull that off? You mean like you lived in it? Or you were able to stay there whenever you wanted to? Oh, God. They say, morning sex is the best unless you're in prison. The surprise morning sex. Oh. That's a good way to look at it. If you keep watching the horizon, we keep having lightning bolts pop up here. That's kind of cool. I'm going to watch my GPS here. It's in Juneau. Okay. Yeah, it's not something you think about for Alaska. You don't think about prisons up there. It just doesn't come to mind. Oh, still driving. Yeah, they plan, like I was saying, they plan for war based on the last war. And the problem is the next war is going to be different than the last war. It always is. Nobody had any idea about this drone thing. Not only can they fly around and look at you, but it started with them flying around dropping grenades on people's heads. And then they started getting a little more creative and started putting shaped charges and slamming into stuff. I mean, nobody was ready for that. Nobody. And now they're trying to figure out how to adapt. And early on, I mean, some people may have seen it coming to an extent. And there was a video of some dude standing there, some Ukrainian soldiers, and the camera pans by him. And this guy has a machine gun, this guy has a rifle, and then one guy has what looks like a really fancy snow shovel. And I backed the video up and I froze it, and that's the best way I can describe it. It looks like kind of like a snow shovel. And it had stamped in the metal, it had an American flag, and it said Defender. And I looked it up, and you can look it up yourself. It is an anti-drone device that you point, pull the trigger, and it blocks the signal. It works within certain limits, I guess. Pull the trigger and knock it out of the sky, but they already had that technology ready, because I think they were thinking about reconnaissance drones, not drones going on the offense. I mean, did not see that coming. I don't think anybody did. This has got me turning up here. I keep seeing lightning pop in the distance, which is kind of cool. Take this off. Yeah, I just rolled 150,000 miles here less than an hour ago on this van, and today my check engine light came on. And every time you turn the vehicle on, it does like a systems check. And if you can get your code to clear whatever problem was a glitch, well, I've started it 4 or 5 times since it came on, and it's not clearing, which means I got a glitch. A real one. So when I get home for my suspension, I'm going to have them plug that in and say, okay, now what? Coming into, where is this? Let me see here where we are on the map. I don't even know. Springfield. I'm going by Springfield, Illinois. This is 55 south. Going through Springfield, and I'm going south right now, but I got to go to the west. It's a subsidiary. Liberty, Missouri is a subsidiary of Kansas City, Missouri. And that is my target. Let's see what this says. You was in Alaska in the 80s. Do you remember? Ween? Air Alaska, Wien Air Alaska. I don't know what that means. Is that an airline? We went, the last time if I remember correctly, we went to Ketchikan, and we landed on that one, they have one runway in Ketchikan. Landed, the next, went across, a ferry boat took us to the other side of the what do you call it, channel, fjord, an airline? No, I don't recognize the name. Ketchikan Air Service put us in a float plane, Cessna 185, and flew us out to something, if I'm not mistaken, it was called Lost Lake. And we went to a fishing cabin. We spent a while out there catching silvers, and then flew back and had those shipped home or something. But I don't remember. That was so long ago. So long ago. I've actually looked that up online. Airlines that came and went, and I tell you what, you're gonna, if you start digging and you find a list, that's a long list of airlines that came and went, or airlines that got bought out by somebody else. The list is long, and if you come down stateside and try to start an airline, you're gonna get pushed out really quick. And how they do it is, if you want to get, I'm just gonna make up a scenario, you're gonna fly from Denver to Albuquerque. You're going to set up a shuttle service with a light plane that goes Denver, Albuquerque, Denver, back and forth. And you just start flying back and forth that route. And a major airline starts watching you, and they see you making money. They're going to go, okay, that's a profitable route. And they're going to put their plane on Denver, Albuquerque. They're going to mark the price down below the price of yours, because they've got 50 other routes that'll cover that up and keep them in business while they're doing it. And then you operate below operating. You can't fly below operating costs, and you go out of business. And then they mark their price up and start making money off it. That's how they screw you out of business. Then Mark Air bought it. Wien Air went out and went broke. Yeah, like I said, that happens. A lot of airlines do go under over that. My brother's wife was a flight attendant. That's actually how they met. She was a flight attendant for Reno Air, and they had an onboard emergency. My brother was a firefighter at the time. Somebody got stroke, heart attack, hammer toe, something happened, and they had to meet the plane on the ramp. And he saw her for the first time, and they got this guy off the plane, and he said, "Is there anything else you need?" And I think he pointed his finger at her, and he said, "Your phone number would be nice." And that's how they actually met. But Reno Air got sucked up by somebody. Somebody bought them. They're gone. My dad was an airline pilot. He flew for Western Airlines starting in 1965 and stayed with them until they got sucked up by Delta, bought them out in 87. So that airline, and Western Airlines came around in 1920-something, 1926, 27. But yeah, airlines being bought out or merged or going out of business. There's an old joke about airline. It says if you want to make money if you want to make $1 million in the airline business, it's really simple. You just start with $2 million, and when you get to the $1 million, get out. That's pretty much true of a lot of businesses. That's what Alaska Air did when the Twin Towers fell. They bought open air routes. Yeah, that's what it comes down to, is some of the regulation controls who has what routes, and you're not really buying lightning. You're not, when you're in the airline industry, you're not really buying their assets. You're buying their routes and their connections. You're not buying their equipment, because they're the customers. Let's see here. I'm going to 36 Jax to 750. Which one am I going on? Okay, I'm supposed to go this way. All right, hold on. Gotta drive. Hold on here. All right, follow this one. Bring this in. Sorry, I don't know my way around here. Ugh, 256 miles. Kansas City. Oh, lightning. Hell yeah. Hold on. Lots of lightning. This is south of Kansas City. Okay, I gotta go 256 miles on this road. Holy crap. This might be my road. There's one road out here. I haven't been out here in years, but it's an east-west road, and I really like it because there's nobody out here. There's nothing out here. No people, no houses, no cars. Are you seeing this lightning popping up? Once we get out of these street lights, you'll really be able to see it. Yeah, a lot of companies. Yeah, you're not buying their assets. You're buying their routes. Western Airlines, their hub was Salt Lake City. That was their main hub, which I thought was weird. And Delta got that. They wanted it. So okie dokie. All right, we are scooching up the highway, and up ahead I'm seeing red and blue lights flashing. I don't know if that's on the highway or off. I'm about to find out. Those are not on the highway. This is a long... Whoa! That's a bad place to park a car, dude. Yeah, that's not on the highway. That's on the ramp right there. Alright, there's one there and another one up here. Oh, well, that sound. Hold on a sec here. Whoa. You don't have to slam on the brakes, people. You keep going. Seriously, you keep going. Keep going. Rubbernecks are us. Keep going. Hold on a second. That guy in between us. Got here. In the 80s, Western Air flew in and out of Anchorage. Oh yeah, that's what we rode up there on. Yeah, my dad, 727s were like the mainstay aircraft, especially for Western, through the 70s into the 80s. And then the newer generation of aircraft came out, the 757, 67, 777s and whatnot, and all the pilots started moving up into the bigger ones. And my dad very much like me. Once you learn an airframe and you're comfortable in it, you're good to go. Leave me alone. And if I understand it right, he was like the last guy that got out of the 727 and moved up to the 57 because he didn't want to learn another airframe. I'm the same way. I get in a helicopter and I learned it and I'm good and leave me alone. And they go, nope, we're going to stick you in this different airframe. I don't want to fly that one. Leave me alone. But sometimes the contract changes. Sometimes the company changes. But yeah, that 727s went up there. That was their absolute main thing. DB Cooper, by the way, jumped out of a 727. That's the one with the air stair in the back. They had to change the design so you couldn't do that anymore. So you couldn't go out the back in flight. I'm watching this weather. I don't know what's going on up here. I can't tell, but rail bridge. Yeah, so yeah, where there's a water tower. There's a Springfield. Ooh. Cool. There's a kid on YouTube. He's probably in his 30s. On YouTube, he's called C, as in the letter C, 90 Adventures. This guy bought a Honda 90, kind of a scooter, but not, and drove it over 10 years. He put 120,000 miles on it. He drove it all over Europe and Asia. He shipped it up to Prudhoe Bay in a crate, put it together, and drove it. Whoa, cool thunder. Lightning. Drove it from Alaska through middle of the winter into Canada, stopped on the Canadian border and drove all the way across Canada to the East Coast, came down the East Coast of the United States and did the TAT, the Trans-American Trail, which is a dirt bike trail across the United States. About 95% of it you can be off-road. Ended up in Washington and then motored down the West Coast through Mexico, had to jump the Darien Gap and then drove it down into Argentina. This little funny looking little scooter thing, and he overhauled that thing more times than you can count. But C90 Adventures, check out his stuff. It's a lot of fun. All right. We are heading west at this point, and we're in Illinois. I still think we're in Illinois. We're heading towards Missouri, and whoa, lightning. Woo! My family in Texas said they've had really nasty storms, so I'm assuming we're driving towards them. Yeah, this is the road. If we can get this traffic to thin out, this will be wonderful, because there's nothing out here. There's no lights, there's no towns, there's no nothing. So if we can get this traffic to thin out, I can use my high beams. This is the type of driving I enjoy. And the roads are decent. Sorry, I gotta blow my schnoz. No, I don't know why my nose is running. Bug. But we are picking up a lot of bugs. New Berlin. Next town is New Berlin. Heard of that one before. Is this true? There is enough private planes that everyone in Alaska could have a plane? Oh, probably, yeah, probably. Something about Alaska is owning a plane is like owning a truck down in the States. It's not a big deal. And you live out in the sticks. One of the family members would learn how to fly, and we knew a family. They sent their 16-year-old daughter to flight school. So when they would head into town, they would toss her, and she would drive. So it was her turn to drive, or literally to fly him into town because they sent her to flight school. And I kind of got a kick out of that. But yeah, there's a lot of private planes out here. A lot. There are, I can't remember the number. They say, how many pilots are there in the United States? And it's not based on how many people have a license. It's how many people have a medical. It's how many people are operationally flying. And I think they said 100,000 is the total. I was a pilot for 35 years. And as of October last year, I don't fly anymore. And wow, the lightning is awesome. I kind of miss it, but I kind of don't. The type of flying I did wasn't the safest in the world, and there are a whole bunch of people I knew over the years that didn't make it because of that. So on one hand, I enjoyed it, and I mean, let's be honest, it paid really well. But on the other hand, I am on the ground and my feet are firmly planted and I'm alive. So I'm going to enjoy the fact that I was able to fly for 35 years and live to tell about it. I mean, I'm not trying to be melodramatic, but they have emergency procedures for aircraft. You have a list of, if this happens, you do A, if that happens, you do B, and you have all that memorized in your skull. You have all the emergency procedures. And I had each and every one of those emergency procedures at one time or another, up to and including one they had to write because of me. And you just get to where you're close to not having a successful long life, and it's just the nature of that job. And we got, to the left and the front and the right now, we got clouds popping. I can't know if you can see that on the screen, but I got lightning clouds everywhere. Wow. As far as the number of airplanes out there flying, I don't really know, but there are a bunch of little airports. Every town has one. You just don't know it's there. And there's little planes all over the place. Whoa! That one showed up on screen. This is kind of cool. By the way, if this feet drops, it occasionally drops off and it sits there and twirls and reconnects. So I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here for a while tonight. 55. Wow. Yeah, there was a time in the 80s when they stopped building little airplanes because every time somebody crashed one, they would sue the manufacturer and win. It didn't matter why they crashed it. It was a design flaw. The plane ran out of gas, fell out of the sky, design flaw, and they'd win. So in the 80s, they just stopped making airplanes because it wasn't worth it. And that's when the kit plane business kicked off, the home build plane, where the plane was partially assembled and you finished it. It's perfectly safe aircraft to fly, but when you go out and ball it up, it's your fault because you built it. But then they finally fixed the laws where they could go back to manufacturing. So there's a big gap in aviation for a lot of planes, year models. Let's see here. Man, the 80s, they didn't have to show anything with buying a ticket and we could smoke. Yeah, I know. I remember Southwest Airlines, that company, they've kind of got their act together. Southwest had a good system. You would buy a ticket, you walk up, pay cash for it. They didn't ask for your ID. They didn't have to have your fingerprint, your photograph, DNA sample. You walked up and you're flying the shuttle up, just say San Francisco to Las Vegas, and they gave you a ticket, and it looked like, you know those tags you would hang on your door at a hotel room that says "Do Not Disturb"? It looked like that. They would hand you this pass, and it was plastic. And you have 50, 60 people, and they would start boarding, and they would say, "Get on, sit down, shut up." They didn't care where you sat because it was all the same. It was 737s, right? They'd say, "Get in, sit down," and the plane's backing away from the gate at 11:37. At 11:37, the plane was backing away from the gate. If you happen to be walking around the aisle, tough. Sit down, shut up, we're flying. And they had to get mean to people, but you know what? They liked it. Because they had the best on-time record, too, because they did it that way. It was just cattle car. And do you remember, you talk about smoking in the planes, do you remember that little, it looked like a 3x5 card, and it had a little clip on the bottom with pins, and they would stick it into a top of a seat somewhere like halfway down the plane, and it said "smoking only from here back" because the ventilation system pulled backwards. Do you remember that? Smoking only from this row back. Way back in the day. In the Cobra helicopter I flew, it had an ashtray in it. And the only thing we used the ashtray for was we had a pin. We had this supposed explosive thing that would blow the canopy off if you crashed and you were laying on this side where your door was. You would turn this handle and it would supposedly blow the hatch off. But that safety pin used to put in the ashtray. That's the only thing we ever used it for. Yeah, that was the old days. How about smoking in movie theaters? You'd be sitting in there and there's this haze just hanging between you and the screen. Well, you're getting old. I turn 57 next month, and my wife is going to turn 57 6 days sooner than me, and I am going to rub her nose in it, which is tradition. And I can call her the old woman, and I ask her about the future, what it's like, and she always goes, "You'll know in 6 days." But I bother her about that. I have, I guess, 67. Oh, come on, trees don't even live that long. I have on here, I guess I'm classified as a content creator at this point because I put all this nonsense out here. I like posting. Man, this lightning is crazy. It's not showing up on the screen. Oh, there's one on the screen. They call me a content creator, and I have what's called YouTube Studio. And it tells me my numbers, how many people, what country they come from, are subscribed. And it also says the age group, and the lowest age group listed is 13 to 17, and the numbers are 0. You go like 25 to 35, it's like 7 or 8%. The older you get, the higher the percentages get, and the most the heaviest, it's like 29% of these people that are on my page are 65 plus. And that makes it real easy for me, because if you're trying to talk about something that happened 5 years ago to a teenager, you might as well be talking about the American, whoa, that looked cool. You might as well be talking about the American Revolution, because that doesn't mean anything to them. And I like the fact that most of the people that come in here and listen to my nonsense are my age. And I appreciate that. Everybody's out there, it's women out there get on here and they're half naked dancing around and look at me. That's great fun. I'm a little more, discerning. I need something a little more interesting. When I was flying out in the Gulf, I talked about this the other day. The guys that work in the oil and gas industry are extremely good at what they do, but outside of that job, which is technical, your conversations are limited to, monster trucks, duck hunting, and maybe college football. I mean, that's pretty much all they want to talk about. And I had one of the operators out there, didn't act and carry himself like the rest, and it turns out he was a college biology professor. I was like, dude, how did you end up out here? And he goes, bored out of my skull. And so he started working out in the Gulf, and I loved flying around with that guy, because we got an hour hop to fly to whatever. We start talking, and we got some great conversations, real technical about some topic, and I just enjoyed flying with him a lot. Then you'd remember the time saver. Which one? In what context? What do you mean by the time saver? See how it's getting, when this car goes by, see how dark it is out here? Let me check my high beam, check it out. Wow. High beams! Problem is I'm getting a lot of bugs on the windshield here. This Ford Transit has these big bucket headlights. Let's see, quick stop. You're talking about a AM PM mini market kind of stuff? Do you remember the commercial for AM PM mini market? AM PM mini market, you can shop around the clock tonight. You can shop all day. Like, dude, shop until you drop, or broad daylight. We're gonna shop. Oh, AM PM markets or something. All right, back to high beams. AM PM mini market. If you look this up on YouTube, you'll see. I don't even know what the name of the place is, but look up Nostalgia 1970s, and it has this really interesting background tune that kind of plays, and the screen will show like a toy from the 70s or a Howard Johnson's. Look at that guy. He's doing triple digits into a rainstorm. You watch the nostalgia stuff, and I don't know the name of the channel or anything. My wife and I find these. They go on for an hour, and it'll show roller rinks, if you remember those. And just, like I said, the Howard Johnsons, it'll show the old station wagons, and it just shows pictures. And then it shows arcades, and the shows are like an hour long, and no matter what the wife and I are doing, we stop and stare, because you remember all of that stuff. And it's just fun to look at this stuff. And I mean, everybody likes modern conveniences. Everybody likes the new technology, but there's also a lot of stuff we lost. A lot of things that we don't have anymore. Wild about Anchorage with wildlife dancing to it in a commercial. I remember in the 70s, being at my grandparents' house, and we'd watch Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom with Marlon Perkins, and he had his sidekick Bob, and they would Bob wasn't a spring chicken either, and he would always have Bob go, hey Bob, run over there and circumcise that water buffalo. They always sent sick Bob on some crazy mission. You're like, why are you picking on that old guy? The Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom was a mainstay at the grandparents' house. Yeah. The old TV commercials and stuff. How about the news reporters that would have their three-piece suits on, but they would be live on scene and they would have a clip on their lapel with their microphone, and they'd always run the cord down their pant leg, and it would be sticking out the bottom of their pants like somehow you weren't going to see that, coming out their pants and going off screen. It looks silly when they would do that. We're starting to pick up some liquid sunshine here. Sorry, my nose is running for some reason. Hold on a second. 234 miles on this road. Cal Worthington Ford. Yeah, it's just... We had in Denver, Colorado, good God almighty, 45 years ago, there was a Chevrolet dealer, which may or may not exist today, and it was called Frontier Chevrolet, or Lightning Strikes, and they had a commercial on the radio 45 years ago. Frontier Chevrolet has got them, we got them, the kind of car you need today. You'll save yourself a lot of money, and best of all, you'll own a Chevrolet. So drive out today to Frontier Chevrolet. We're on the Boulder turnoff at the Valley Highway. See you here, honk honk at Frontier Chevrolet. Why do I? Never been there. 45 years ago, I know that stupid commercial. Never owned a Chevrolet either. It's starting to rain now. We're getting into this. At least this will peel the bugs off. Hey, since you live up in Alaska, I got a question. Have you ever been to Whittier, just south of, I think it's just south of Anchorage? Have you ever set foot in there? Further away. Oh, you have an opinion on that town as like a retirement location. Man, I got 235 miles to go, and it says I'm going to get there at 1:45, and supposedly this place stays open until 2. This clock is slowly getting away from me. Yeah, I've seen some documentaries about it. The whole town lives in one building, and I'm looking for retirement, and whoa! And my idea of retirement is getting away from everybody and kind of isolating yourself from the world as it goes down the toilet, and I was wondering if that town would fit the mold. Let's see, they wanted to build a prison. Seriously? The town's only got a few hundred people in it, and they all live in that high rise. Alright, I gotta switch to slippery mode. I am on cruise control, and it's usually not a good idea to run cruise in the rain. It's starting to rain pretty bad, and I had my transmission set on economy, and I just switched it over to slippery wet, so if it senses a slip, it won't like freak me out here. I want to build it seems like it's a fishing town, and it has literally one high rise, and apparently everybody lives in it. Whoa! Okay, now we're raining. Yeah, now we're getting the bugs off. That guy that was blasted by me in the motorcycle probably isn't having a lot of fun right now. Well, the railroad starts there. All right. I'm having to back off on my speed a little bit here. There we go. Yeah, you don't want to push a rear-wheel drive vehicle real hard in the rain. You start to hydroplane. I'm having to back off a little. I'm driving with my foot now. Okay, good. You don't have to use your flashers. It's not that dramatic. Yeah, I was just wondering if you've ever been there, is it a place worth visiting, a place worth living in, or, I mean, some places are just depressing to live at, some places are cool. I was just curious your thoughts. There you go. Coming over. Oh yeah, now we're getting there. Not really good to live there, or not really bad? Which not really are you referring to? You know, again, I'm talking about retiring and being kind of off the map a little bit. My wife and I, we have a townhouse. Whoa, there it goes, first slip. We have a townhouse, and we like to travel and use our townhouse is kind of like a home base, but we go out and do stuff. It freaking sucks, all right. But that'd be a safe way to describe most of Alaska. I mean, out of curiosity. That's why I want to go up there and kind of cruise around and see what's going on. I can't drive on cruise control anymore. I got to get steady. Man, you got enough water standing on the road at this point. Another one. Holy crap. I am slowly losing speed here because the van is starting to spin. A mining claim? Yeah, I'm not looking to go to work. Okay, down pause. There it is. I'm not looking for a mining claim. I don't want to go to work. I'm getting to that age where I don't want to do anything. I'm trying to get to 62. That's my goal. I'm having to pay for here. Yeah, I'm having to slow a little bit because my wheels are starting to spin. Too much water on the road. Hold on. Alright. Now look at you going. First comfort. Ozzy, the first concert in heaven. Sorry. Yeah. Well, considering the lifestyle he led, he lived a lot longer than I think most people would have given him credit for. He had they were reporting on the news that he had some strange form of Parkinson's, like some rare. All right, that backed off a little bit. There we go. Back up to speed. Back up to speed. There we go. Well, that didn't last. Sorry, I'm having to spend more time looking out the window right now. Down a little bit again. Oh my God. Were you on here the other day when I was talking about Gen X music? You know, the good stuff? You don't have to work the land. It's cheaper than buying property. Oh, I see what you're saying. The older I get, that was my first drop. It's back live. My feed's kind of coming and going. Okay, I did a stream the other day called Gen X Music, and you mentioned Ozzy. It was a story. My wife and I watched a documentary, and I'll just replay that one part of it. It kind of cracked me up. Do you remember back in the day, high school bands were really, really common? They were like, when we were kids, 70s and 80s, there were lots. Now, today, I don't even know if people do that anymore. But in Great Britain, they had a dump truck load of bands back then, high school bands doing their thing. And you don't necessarily form a band and then you just immediately, okay, here's 3, 4, 5 people, okay, we have a band, let's go. Sometimes you have to add people and subtract people to get the right combination. Like, you know, Freddie Mercury of Prince of Queen, he wasn't in just Queen, he was in a handful of other bands. It's just the ingredients weren't there. So in Great Britain, you had all these high schools, Great Britain / Scotland, there's all these high schools, and they're forming these bands, and there were these 4 dudes that they were kind of the weirdos, and the weirdos weren't getting, they were musicians, they were musically inclined, but they weren't getting picked up by anybody, because they were kind of, I don't want to say they're outcasts, but they didn't blend really well. So these 4 dudes came together and formed their own band. Let me take a look here. What was the first band that Ozzy and Don't Say Black? I have no idea. I don't know much about, honestly, I don't know much about Ozzy. It was a little before my time. But these 4 guys came together, and they all dressed really weird. And one thing about a band, or any music, if you look at the band members, they have a theme. They dress a certain way. They kind of match. The country guys all kind of have the country look. The rock guys have the rock. They match. Well, these 4 guys didn't match. They all looked different. So they literally called their band Fashion Mismatch. And they wrote their own music and they performed their own music, and it was a kind of a cross between pop and punk. They kind of mixed it together. And then somewhere in Great Britain they had the Battle of the Bands, and they won. And one of the perks of winning was in 1981 they got to go to France and be on a TV show called the Something Swap Shop. And they perform live, so they're getting ready to go over there, and they're dressed, again, fashion mismatch. Their parents said, you're not going to go over there dressed like refugees, you guys have to dress up. And they go, you know how that conversation went, but Mom! So they ended up getting in suits, and they went over there to perform, and it's a live program. And they have the guy that's, running the cameras, because they're doing other segments, and the guy said, okay, you guys are going on next, we got all your stuff, and the dude in charge said, what's the name of your band? And he goes, oh, we're Fashion Mismatch. And he's like, what does that even mean? So he explains it, they kind of explain, blah, 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 and they go, okay, well, that word doesn't work in French, so we'll just use the French version of Fashion Mismatch. And they said, okay, what is that? And the guy said, Depeche Mode. And they went, oh, you don't say. I believe I could work with that. And that's where the name came from. And those guys are still going. I don't like to say the Black Sabbath. I don't really know the history of them. I remember when the Monkees had their own show. Oh yeah, in the early 70s. I think there's one, at the most 2 of those guys left. The lead guy, the lead singer, the little guy, he died. He was like 64. He died. The Monkees, yeah, the Monkees was the American version of the Beatles. They had that show, 71, 72, around there. There is it's a cop car, isn't it? see if I get this one off. We're going west. Stand by here. I gotta get this mile marker. Stand by. Yeah, we got highway patrol on the median marker 61. All right. Sorry. Part of the game. Yes. Back in the olden days. MeTV, M-E, it's memorable entertainment. It plays all those TV shows from way back when. Hogan's Heroes, for instance, comes on. I like watching a lot of stuff. Ironically, Hogan's Heroes was a big hit over in Germany when it was on the air. That kind of cracked me up. But they called it, over there the show was called The Cage Full of Heroes. Yeah, that's crackling my radio real bad. Yeah, I'm one of those weirdos that runs CB. And nowadays the CB is generally quiet, but when stuff starts happening, it usually lights up pretty strong. Combat and the Rat Patrol. Combat, starring Vic Morrow and Rick Jason. Yes, I remember that show. They always shot up the bad guys, and then they would pack up their gear and leave all those souvenirs lying on the ground. I'd be like, man, you need to pick that stuff up. Yeah, combat. Oh, yeah. The Rat Patrol, I remember all those shows. There was a show I watched as a kid, and I thought it was awesome back then. It was WKRP in Cincinnati. And the other day, it somehow came across the computer or my phone, and I watched it, and it was like, it just, either it didn't age well or my taste had changed, because it wasn't even that entertaining. And I guess maybe it was just the world has changed or I changed. One of the two. Yeah, and on Hogan's Heroes, you remember LeBeau? Little French guy who wasn't French. His name was Robert Clary. He had the concentration camp tattoo on his arm. He was the real. That was something that happened to my wife. Her grandparents, she's Jewish, and about 14 years ago, we were down in Houston at the Holocaust Museum. We were walking around, and at the end, they had a plaque on the wall with 1,000 names on it, and it was people who, after World War II, packed their bags and moved to Houston from Germany, concentration camp people. And we're just looking at this plaque, and her grandparents' name were on there, and she stopped and went, wait a minute, that's my people. And her mother's dead. And she called her aunt, their grandparents are gone, she called her aunt, and he goes, whoa, what's going on? And she goes, yeah, they were in the concentration camp. And I'm finding out now at the age of 40-something, she goes, yeah, they didn't talk about it. That's the end of it. And then she said, she's remembering back, it's hot in Texas. And she said, I was remembering back that she never saw her grandparents wear short sleeve shirts, ever. Because they were covering up their tattoo that way. But you think about society we live in now, we have people trying to claim street cred and get paid for an experience they've never had because maybe their ancestors had a bad experience trying to get paid for it, versus people who were there who not only didn't cry about it, they don't even mention it to their own family members. I mean, that's how far it's gone. You remember Baba Black? That was one of my favorite shows. Coming from an aviation background, that was one of my favorite shows. With the F4U, the Corsairs, that was great. The Japanese Zeros were portrayed by T-6 Texans. Those are the trainer planes, because the T-6s came a dime a dozen. There's still a lot of them around there. The Zeros, if memory serves, today there's exactly one in existence, and it was overhauled by some company here in the United States, and they gave it to the Japanese government. It's sitting in a museum over there. But yeah, the T-6 Texans played the Zeros in that. But yeah, the critics didn't like the movie because they said it gave the war an aw shut. I like the show. It was shot in and if you watch the airplanes take off and land, in the background you can see chain link fences and telephone poles because there was power being run. And since they shut that show down, that whole area has been completely built over by houses. Want to see something? Wait. Want to hear something about Pappy Boyington? I'm somewhat familiar with him. I know he died in '87. I know he was a drunk. I know he got credited with some kills in the. He was part of the Flying Tigers, where they were paying you to shoot planes down, and you got credit for what you shot up on the ground too. But what you got about old Pappy? I know a guy that met him at an air show. His comment that he said about him was he was signing autographs, and sitting next to him was a Japanese ace that was signing autographs, and he asked him, what do you think about sitting next to this guy? And he goes, I didn't like him then, I don't like him now. So what you got on Pappy? My dad had a neighbor, late 70s, up in Lake Tahoe, who flew B-24s over Europe during the war. And on one of his missions, they had the big old radial engine, and they got hit with flak really bad. And one of the engines started misfiring really bad, but it didn't quit. It kept running. So he said we got a cylinder missing on a cylinder, and they kept going. And that motor kept running. They got it all the way back, and they landed, and they got out, they looked at the damage, and they took the expression, lost a cylinder to a whole new level, because that whole cylinder and the piston were shot off the airframe, but the other 8 pistons kept the motor running. All the oil went out the hole, the engine just kept running for some reason. He, before dying, owned an airline in Anchorage called Polar Air Service. No kidding! I didn't know he owned anything. It seemed like he wasn't very responsible, honestly, as an adult. But he owned an airline up there? Or was it like, you talking float planes or DC-3s or whatever? We used to have this guy that hung around my little social circle. We called him the Commando. He was in the Army. I think it turns out he was a tank mechanic, or a wheel mechanic or something. And he would always talk about back when he was a Green Beret and back when he was Special Forces. Well, yeah, that all came out, and he kind of disappeared after that. But he always had big plans to do big things. And do you remember that TV series called Ice Pilots? This guy watched 1 or 2 mini episodes. Oh, he had a big plane. All right, he ran a big one. When I think of air service in Alaska, I think of DC-4s and DC-3s and stuff like that. Well, the Commando watched too many episodes of Ice Pilots, where they would have people come up there and work in the. Sorry, popping a can here. Not a beer, it's a Celius. They come and work in the warehouse loading planes, and then eventually they would work their way into the cockpit. They would say, okay, you can go. Old planes had a pilot, co-pilot, a second officer, and sometimes like a flight engineer. Well, he's watching this TV show of these people showing up, working in the docks, and then getting in a plane and going and flying. And blah, blah. So he came in one day and he just declared he's going to move to Alaska and become a bush pilot, starting from zero. And I went, dude, run this by me again. And he goes, oh yeah, on this TV show, people go up there and they work for him, and then, after a certain amount of time, they put him in the aircraft. I say, stop. Okay, hold on. That aircraft requires a pilot, a co-pilot, and a second officer / engineer, not a pilot, a co-pilot, and a guy with stars in his eyes. Every one of those people that came up there and work in his warehouse are licensed commercial pilots, twin engine with a certain amount of experience. They're not just taking random clowns off the street and sticking them in the cockpit. It doesn't work like that. But he was convinced he was going to go up there with zero flight training and just step right into the bush pilot role, which, you got to have a little bit of time under your belt to start flying bush, because that's a little more, variable, little stranger scenarios you're dealing with off airport runways. You don't stick a rookie, especially a zero flight time rookie, into a situation. But this guy was trying to pick his future cool sounding career based on a TV show. I do know one guy that was flying up there in Alaska. There's a guy I flew with in the Army, and I looked him up a few years ago. And he was flying C-130s on the North Slope somewhere, running cargo around. But that was 7-8 years ago. I talked to him. Wasn't very friendly. I mean, I was texting with him online, but he was not very friendly. Remember that. Ugh. Yeah, talking about ice pilots, I applied for a job back in 2009 through a company out of Denver to go fly in the Antarctic. And the seasons down there are backwards from what they are up here. Their summers are winter and vice versa. And they were looking for a seasonal pilot up there to work, and I thought, what a cool thing to have on your resume, What a cool thing to say, yeah, I got to go to the Antarctic. Yeah, cargo and fuel hauling. But I thought, what a cool thing to have on your resume. Say, I flew, X amount of months to the Antarctic. So I applied. There was a company out of Denver called Blue. I don't remember the rest of it, but I did this is before Zoom ever existed. I did an online interview with this guy, and I told him my experience and what I've done and what I had and my credentials, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, all right. And then I get an email later, and he says, hey, it's down to you and one other person. And then a while later, I get this notice that said, congratulations, we'd like to offer you the job as the new pilot to fly down, blah, blah. I'm like, cool. And I told my current employer, I told him I was trying that job out. And it was like, cool, let's go do this. And I'm all excited. And then the next day, I get another email that's rescinding the offer with no explanation. I said, okay, this is interesting. And I called the guy, I couldn't get a hold of him. I called HR, got kicked around, finally got a hold of a human being in HR, and I said, I need a little more information here, people. And they said, oh, well, there's been a complaint of sexual harassment filed against you. And I'm thinking, the only person I've talked to, minus this person in HR, was the dude I saw on the computer screen. So I'll play. I say to him that he didn't like, that I complimented earlobes or something, and she, okay. And reality of what I know about her. And I go, I didn't know she existed. I've never talked to her. I've never interacted with her until you said this. I didn't know that was a female. Well, she said that you were pressuring her. Anyway, I got hired and fired within like 24 hours. About 3 weeks later, I get another contact from them, and it said, yeah, the other pilot didn't work out. And what happens is when somebody's trying for their first flying job, or someone's trying for a job like that's beyond their capabilities, they have a tendency to, shall we say, fluff up the resume and skill level a little bit for the job. And they got her into training, and she showed pretty quick that she didn't have what it takes to go down there and fly an environment, because that's, to put it mild, is a harsh environment. And she ended up not getting through training, let alone going down there. So they were now offering me the job, and I told them with as few words as possible, mostly with 3- and 4-letter combinations, that I wasn't really interested, since they'd already laid their cards on the table. And then they tried to contact me a second time, and I just deleted the email. I'm not interested. Whoa! There's a excessive amount of cars out here tonight, but this is the road I like. If you look on the left and the right, there's nothing out here until this traffic thins out. And it's 10. What? Yeah, it's 10:15 here local. Whoa! Flies a flight simulator to Expo 70. Villages I have been in Alaska, I could rewire. I've been everywhere. Flies a flight simulator at Expo 70. I have never actually flown a flight simulator. I mean, beyond the official ones at training where they do stuff. But as far as a computer, home computer, I've never actually flown one of those. I have, if you go on my playlist, I don't even know what playlist it's under, but I've got one in there. Maybe under Scenic Route. I've actually got some simulator filming in there. The real fancy ones, the ones in the buildings. But I have flown those sims, the one you kind of have to do to go through training. I filmed a little bit of that. But as far as flight sim on your home computer, I've never done one. As a matter of fact, I'm not even a gamer, so I don't really do that stuff. If you've ever flown a real flight simulator, they're kind of cool because they're on hydraulics. And what will happen is it will turn, the hydraulics and the whole thing will turn, and the screen the screen will stay turned, but the floor will start to reset, so it still feels like you're laying over. So if you turn a second time, you feel like you're falling out of it, even though it's not that far over. It's very deceptive. We get that in a C-30. What's a C-30? Are we there yet? It was a C-30 cargo. You're talking about a C-130? I don't know what a C-30 is. Are we there yet? No, I am on, what is this? Highway 36, westbound in Missouri. I like this road because there's nothing out here, but there's a lot of cars out here for some reason. It's all dark in the distance. And my next turn is 200 miles on this road for a drop, which I'm not going to make on time. Airplane? I'm a helicopter guy. I can fly an airplane. I'm not licensed, but I can fly one. But I'm actually a helicopter guy, or let me rephrase it. I'm a retired helicopter guy from the old days. And somewhere in there, when you say helicopter guy, they say, what did you fly? Okay, you ready? I learned how to fly in a Huey. That was the primary trainer when I was in. I flew Cobras in the Army, got out, flew Jet Rangers, Bell Long Ranger, L1, 3, and 4, Bell 407, Eurocopter EC-130s, which are now called Airbus, Eurocopter AS-350B, BA, B2, B3, and B3E. And the B-nothing that I flew was the 17th aircraft that was off the assembly line at Eurocopter out of 13,000 airframes. That was number 17. What year? Well, I flew from 89 to last October. So I got 35 years under my belt. Whoa, as a door gunner. Cool. Interesting about being a door gunner, which side of the aircraft you sat on was important, not for safety, but for the weapon. Your weapon belt fed from the left side, so if you were on the right side of the aircraft, the wind resistance would sometimes jam the weapon. So it was important to sit on the left side. You had any control over it. Thank you for sure. Okay, yeah, I did. I was in till Bill Clinton showed up, and then I got Bill Clinton out of the military. Right after he got elected, they cut the military to pieces. The Army got shrunk by 1/3, like overnight. They still had the same mission. They just had a fraction of the assets. And since then, I think it's continued to go down. Yeah, my cab unit, there were 47 guys in my cab unit. I think 2 of them survived the cut, and I wasn't one of them. But such is life. You got hit by flak? You mean like shot up in Vietnam or something? Is what you're talking about? They didn't have a whole lot of anti-aircraft guns beyond like heavy machine guns. Flak, when they say flak, it's more explosive, like a 57 millimeter or an SA-6 missile, something that goes kabooyah. I've got some experience with that. He was elected in 93. Yeah, he got the 92 election. He got put in office in 93, and right after he came in, we got, our unit got sliced to pieces. It happens. Oh well. I was in 8. Oh, good God Almighty. I was born in 68. That would make you born in what, 85? I've been driving since 84. Wow. As if I didn't feel old enough. You know, they say life is like a roll of toilet paper. The closer to the end you get, the faster it goes. There is some truth to that, because when I was a kid and somebody said that something wasn't going to happen for another 6 months, you just lay down on the floor and die. Now when somebody says 6 months, they're talking about Tuesday. Yeah, I was hatched in 85. You said flying from Okinawa to Tichida. We got hit with what? You hit a bird, or I mean, what are we talking about here? Oh, from Nam, yeah, okay. The plane was moved into a hangar for morale. Okay. Yeah, Vietnam was before my time. That's, ironically, the Vietnam War is how my dad got to be an airline pilot. A lot of military pilots, a lot of civilian pilots were military or reservists. Vietnam kicked off, and the military people went, and the civilian airline people got pulled into service. And listen to this: in 1964 and 1965, they were running ads in the newspaper that said wanted, job opening, airline pilots, no experience necessary. My dad literally got hired off the street as a UPS driver and put in the cockpit and taught how to fly and became an airline pilot. That's how weird the world was back then. The plane was moved, says, in the general said it was flak. Well, flak is an explosive. I mean, the NBA and the Viet Cong had something up to a 12.7 or a 14.5 heavy machine gun, and that's anti-aircraft gun. But I think flak is a generic word, but flak comes from a German word that I cannot pronounce. It's like 4 feet long. That basically means exploding shells, and I don't think anybody flew high enough to. And I got lightning behind me now to have exploding stuff. But yeah, it's what they're saying is it got hit from ground fire. Whoop, car on the side of the road. Look at that. Surprise. We move over further in the future. Jeez. Wow. Playing with my headlights. I've got, like I said, I've got these vans come with these big bucket headlights, and I like the high beams. Here, let's get a chance here. Check this out. Whoa. I like these. And when all the traffic goes away, I get to run on high beams. Hotshot. Where are you from, and what do you do for work? Well, I'm an exotic dancer. I live, since I don't fly anymore, and 57 next month. I'm trying to get to 62. I live north of Houston, about 40 miles, and I am working as an expediter, which is hotshot. I have a cargo van that I own that I'm sitting in right now, and I've been bouncing around the country for the last few weeks. And right now I am going from Dearborn, Michigan, which is Detroit, and I'm shooting towards Liberty, Missouri, which is Kansas City, and I have a box that weighs about 3 pounds, and looks like it holds a set of boots or something. And I'm dropping this, and I'm going to deadhead back to Houston because my suspension is giving me grief. I just rolled 150,000 miles on this hot rod, and when I'm going slow over a bump, the front end is rattling because I think the struts just wore out. I need to replace the struts. And earlier today, I got a check engine light, so I need some TLC. There I was, an airline pilot whose dad went to Vietnam when he was fired from his retirement flight. 40 years later, he bought his dad home. Wow, no kidding. Huh. Okay, didn't know that. Yeah. Whew. All right. Yeah, that was a weird situation over there. Hold on a second. All right. My window got cleaned off. Look at this. I got more schmegma on there when I started. Yeah, it's expensive. The nature. And this is one. I don't have a clue what's in this box. The kind of stuff you expedite in these vans, and unless you're in this business, you won't even notice these things, but these white vans are everywhere. And I've had a couple of them pass me here tonight. But these little white Sprinter vans are all over the place, and they run 24 hours a day. This is, for lack of a better word, this is truck driving, but it's truck driving in a box van. Check your tie rods. It might be the tie rods, but it slowly got louder and louder. It's not affecting my steering at all. It's not pulling. My steering isn't loose. It's just when you hit a bump, it just goes. It's got that. It's just not catching the spring, if that makes any sense. But I already ordered 2 shocks. I'm watching Bigfoot and Yeti, and I am listening to you. Any cadavers or hearts? No, we don't carry that kind of stuff. But the weird stuff that you carry, I had once a big old pallet full of dipsticks because they were short. A lot of automotive stuff. A couple of pallets full of the gaskets that your door frame, the seal when you close your door. One of the more satisfying deliveries I made, I picked up in Pennsylvania. It was an electric motor, heavy electric motor, and I drove on this road, as a matter of fact, that I'm on right now, to Kansas City to a Campbell soup plant, manufacturing plant, and it was due. They give you they do the math, the distance, and they give you an average of 50 miles an hour, and they say don't be there later than fill in the blank, or in some places they want you at that time, not early, not late. It's kind of weird, but they said it's like 11 o'clock. Well, I drove through the night on this road, drove all the way to the plant. I got there at like 6:50 in the morning, and I drove around the back, looked for the ramp, and I walk in, and there were probably 25 people in the office at 6:50 in the morning. And I walk in with my clipboard, and they all turn to look at me, and the guy goes, "Do you have the motor?" And I said, "Yes," and everybody got excited. I mean, they got all excited. I'm like, whoa. And these guys, they said, "Okay, go over here." It's like you pulled the fire alarm. Everybody started running around, and they load up, and I'm like, damn, what's the big deal? Hold on, let me read this. Go to Alabama, tons of dipsticks there. My dad's brother lied about his age, flew in World War II in a bomber. He later became an airline. That's cool. A lot of people lied to get into the military back then. But the motor was it's a Campbell soup cannery, and apparently they have these gigantic assembly lines, and these electric motors had been there for decades, and they never had this one blew up. And the guy said, and I can't remember the number he gave me, but he said we're losing something like $13,000 an hour in lost production. And the fact that I got there 4.5 hours early was really important to them, and they were real excited about that. But that's why people use hotshot. That's something they need right this second. There was a whole bunch of people who lied to get into the military in World War II. And there was a guy, you can look him up, his name was Jack Lukes. He wrote a book called Invincible. He died here not too long ago. He was 80 years old. The dude got in the faked his birth certificate, which was real common back then. Got into the Marine Corps at 14. Went through basic training, and then he got trained on a heavy machine gun. And the people who were training him he's on the East Coast, got on a train and went to the West Coast, and he was going to take their place and be the new trainers. Well, he just jumped on the train with them, rode to California, and they were like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "I don't know. They told me to get on." "Okay, I guess you're here now." And then those people off the train were going to take the place of people who were going over to Hawaii. And he did the same thing. He got from that unit, jumped on with the guys going to Hawaii. And he rode over there. And they said, "Well, what are you doing here?" And he goes, "I don't know. They told me to get on the boat." "Okay, now you're here." Well, somebody found out he was, at the time, 16 years old by now. And the guy in charge figured it out and said, "You're not going anywhere." And they made him a truck driver, a delivery, like a transport driver on the island. The Iwo Jima Invasion Task Force stopped in Honolulu on the way to Iwo Jima, and he parked his truck on the dock, and the little lighters, the little boats are going back and forth to the ships. He jumped on board the ship, one of the lighters, and rowed out to one of the troop ships, and they left. If you are AWOL is one thing. If you're AWOL for more than 30 days, you're a deserter. He rode on the ship, and 29 days later turned himself in. And the little commander on the boat liked him enough and said, "All right, we're going to keep you." And they put him in a machine gun squad. He ended up getting wounded on Iwo Jima by shoving 2 grenades into the soil because he was at his feet around everybody, and he laid on them. And they blew up, and he popped up in the air and came back down, and he lived. He got the Congressional Medal of Honor, 17 years old. And came back, was in the hospital for a while, got out, got a full ride scholarship, 1947. He's in college. He's the new guy, new kid in college. He's in the dorms. He's surrounded by jocks. You know jocks, big jocks, right? Hold on a second, let me catch my scroll here. I gotta go, be safe. All right, Laird, take care. I use hotshot flying service. I need something now, not later, from Fairbanks. Yeah, in my property in Alaska, it takes about an hour to cost me. Yeah, it's expensive. I agree, it's expensive. But sometimes the lost production is expensive. You want to talk about, real quick, talking about the cost of operations. When I was flying as a medical pilot, I just talking numbers real quick. Some of the aircraft are independent. They're sitting at an airport, and some of the helicopters are sitting at a hospital, and they're what's called a hospital program aircraft. And the rules they operate under are completely different. And if they don't have a crew, meaning a pilot, a nurse, and a medic, they say if you don't have a full crew and the bird is out of service, they get fined something like $20,000 for that 12-hour shift. They don't have a bird available. It's really bad. So they want, like a pilot, if they have a pilot shortage, they'll say, "Hey, we want someone to come cover this. You can, quote, bid the flight, bid the 12-hour hitch." Meaning, you're going to have to pay me this much money plus this much money for travel to go there. So I would bid it and drive my car, 500 miles, be there for 12 hours, fly, not fly, whatever, and then go home. And you could bid like $3,000 to work that 12-hour hitch because it was going to cost them $20,000 if you didn't. It was crazy the kind of money you could make doing that. Yeah, it cost you $1,000. He knew my friend's dad then. My friend's dad helped raise the flag. He was one of the guys in that group. He was in the actual holding the flag, or he was in the 40-man team that went up the slope. Because that's 2 different groups. There's the first little flag, the second big flag, and the team that went up there was a 40-man team. They've actually written books about that. Yeah, so I was talking about Jack Lucas went to college. He's not a very large person, and he's in the dorms, and he's surrounded by jocks, because, jocks are the tough guys. and a news reporter came in and said, "Hey, can I interview you?" And he said, "Sure." And he sat down on his bunk and he told his life story, more or less. And it brought out the photograph of him shaking President Truman's hand and showed it to him, took his picture, and the guy left. And Jack turns around and there's like 200 people standing there listening to this in the dormitory, all the jocks and all the other students, because, again, the jocks think they're tough guys. And here's this dude that's been through up one side and down the other by the time he was 17 years old, but he wasn't a jock. And I got a kick out of that. But he's got a really interesting book out there. The one on the mound. I was going to a mining site, and the pilot does a flyby about 25 feet above the ground. Yep, I can land here. Oh yeah, you gotta look at your LZ. You don't just want to go whip it in there at the last second, discover that someone built a fence across it, or there's a ditch or something you're not seeing. You don't want to find out when you're committed to it. But yeah, you got to buzz an LZ. Helicopters, we do a lazy square around it. Look for your ins and your outs, and then you shoot your approach. You can eyeball. It's a little easier in a helicopter because you can get your speeds down a whole lot more. Oh wow! Here we go. High beams. Ha ha ha! Love it. Love it. Thanks for being on here, by the way, guys. It's keeping me awake. This is what I need. 182 miles. Yeah, I'm going to miss my tune. I'm going to miss stuff. Oh, well, this sucks. So I'm not going to be able to deliver this till 7 in the morning. The back of this van sounds like I'm driving through water, even though the ground is dry. Yeah, I do the land off field and stuff. Well, that's helicopters. They do that kind of stuff. I like landing, when I was doing medical, I liked when they would cordon off a piece of road and you would land in the middle of an intersection or something like that. I kind of like doing that stuff. Got power lines on all sides and street signs and traffic lights. You got to kind of be watching all sides at once and tiptoe down. The last thing I flew was a Bell 407, which I am very fond of. When we do search and rescue, we make, that happens sometimes. Made chocolate chip cookies for Vietnam vets flying in on choppers. That's cool. That's cool. When we were flying Katrina, they were pulling every helicopter they could find, including museum pieces. And there were hundreds of aircraft zipping around in New Orleans during that time. And we would go in and land somewhere, we'd be spinning, and I had an old couple walk up and hand us a plate of cookies, which was well received because we were living primitive at the time, but they said, we don't know what else to do to help. But I said, this is helping a lot. And our company the company I was flying for at the time had 22 or 24 helicopters, all Jet Rangers and Long Rangers, and they were all involved in the Katrina dumpster fire. And my boss man, the owner of the company, had a helicopter called an R-44, a Robinson, and it's a teeny tiny aircraft. It's piston powered and it's not good for the oil and gas industry. It's kind of lightweight. They don't fly them offshore, but he used it as his own little private transport. And we were sitting at our makeshift gas station in the town of Reserve, Louisiana, which is out the west end of New Orleans. We had set up we had a little RV there and a fuel tank, and we had a guy that lived there for like a month. And he would just get out and refuel us and go back in his trailer, and we stayed there for freaking a month. He had a shower, and the business next door let him in to use a shower and everything, but he lived there. James was his name. He's full-time tent dweller. Anyway, we're sitting there taking on gas. I'm spinning. And at the time, it's supply and demand, how much something costs. And we're taking on go-go juice, and these two scruffy dudes get out of the pickup truck and walks over, and the guy says, I'm with AP. news, and we need a helicopter. I went, really? And I'm turning, right, John? I'm spinning while we're having this conversation. So this is back during flip phones. So let's see here. They had the glucose to make it through the yeah, I agree. Got to stay awake. So this guy says, we need a helicopter. What do we do? And I said, hold on. And I opened my flip phone, and dialed the boss, and I shoved it up under my headset so the mic was handed in front of my face, and I had the headset. I said, hey, I got two dudes here looking for a fling wing. You got one? And he goes, we just got the R-44, the little tiny bird. And I told him, we got this little tiny helicopter. It's ridiculously small, but it'll fly. And he goes, okay, well, what's the price? And my boss said, $400 an hour, 3-hour minimum. And I turned and I said, $550 an hour, 4-hour minimum. They said, okay. And my boss started laughing in my ear when I said that. He flew it out. They whipped out the magic credit card and took these guys and flew them all over. They got their pictures for AP. You got a kick out of that. This is weird. It sounds like I'm driving on wet roads. Behind me, the sound I hear behind me, but the roads are dry. But it sounds like I'm kicking up water for some reason. I don't understand this. We are on a bridge. What fog? You're right, the tie rods might be loose. Like I said, the van doesn't shake, it doesn't wobble, it doesn't pull in any direction, nothing, it's giving me no bad feeling except the noise it's making at slow speeds. It's like a little rut that goes clank. It's like the whole thing is dropping out. And my buddy owns a body shop where I live. They restore this coming week, but the other guy's going to be there, and I called him and I said, hey dude, I need a little bit of TLC for my van. He said, bring it, and I just pay him to take care of it. So I ordered 2 struts online yesterday. If you go into a regular shop, it costs like $1,000, and I paid $175 for 2 front ones, and we're going to slap those suckers on there. They're just bolt on. That's the advantage. The coil, remember the shocks? You could put the shocks in, but the coils, the springs, you had to have a compressing tool. They probably have it, but these the struts, it's just bolt them. You literally unbolt it, slap the new ones in, and slap it down. But if the tie rods are loose or anything, they'll be able to tighten that up. But this, like I said, this van has 150,000 on it. This Transit, but when I was at our company's HQ in Toledo, I spent a night there, and I got to talk to other van drivers with the company. And honestly, that's the first time I've ever had the opportunity to sit around and talk to other van drivers for the company. You occasionally see the vehicles driving around, but you don't really interact with other people. This talking to my phone right here is the most talking I do out here. But I got to talk to a handful of them, and there was a woman there that had been with the company for 7 years, and she's driving the exact same make and model that I have. And she gave me some pointers on, take care of this and don't forget that. And she said she has 665,000 miles on her van, and the only thing she's ever replaced non-routine maintenance was a timing chain. So I have high hopes for this thing. All right, the traffic. What time we got? Yeah, it's 10:45 local, and the traffic has thinned out, as you can see. There's nothing out here. There's no lights. There's no roads. There's no power lines. I get to use my high beams. So I'm quite happy. Yeah, I agree, the mileage, but think about the type of mileage I'm putting on it. We're just driving on cruise on the highway all the time. I did expediting temporarily a while back when COVID hit, because at the time I was flying Grand Canyon tours, and the whole thing just shut down with COVID. So my buddy and I went together, we bought a van, and I put 180,000 miles on it Same van, but it was the tall long. This is the medium extended. But it was the super tall long Transit 350. I realized I didn't need one quite that big, so that's why I bought this one. And at 180,000 miles, we pulled the brake pads off, and they looked new. He said, "Are you dragging your ass on the ground or something?" And I said, "No, dude, all we do is sit out here on cruise control on the highway." This is really easy wear and tear on a vehicle. Just a constant speed, staying in one gear, not using the brakes, and you get the engine warmed up and you leave it warmed up and you do routine maintenance. And these things will last, because this is the easiest wear and tear you can possibly put on it. Now, I did get this thing used, so, it's going to have other kinds of use, but honestly, as of right now, I have put 41,000 miles on this van in the last less than 6 months that I've had it, and it hasn't given me a lick of trouble. Not a lick. And this is the first thing that's happened, was this rattling sound of the front end, and I got a check engine light, and based on my other sensors that have failed, like my tire pressure sensors have all died, and now I have a check engine light popped on it. What happens when you get a check engine, you shut the engine off, later you turn it back on, and it'll cycle, and usually it clears. Well, this one isn't clearing. I don't know what's wrong. I checked my oil, I checked my coolant. It's not giving me any bad feels, so it's still running, so I think it's probably another sensor went out. So I may have to spend a little money on some electrical stuff, but other than that, this thing is solid. I don't want to brag about my mechanical abilities, but I have one small tool bag with a couple essential tools, including a socket, an extension, and a ratchet to get the oil plug off, and a little handle, a little cap that takes off the oil filter, and I change my own oil. I keep a handful of filters under the seat, use anything but Fram, and I order my oil. I found out this takes a 520 full synthetic, and I found that I can order those castor oil off Amazon for like $22 for the 5 quarts, and I just keep a little rotation of them, and I can change my own oil. After all, hoo-ah, that's easy. Disconnect the negative terminal, wait, then reconnect, see if check engine light goes out. I just let it recycle itself. Like I said, when you shut the vehicle off and shut it and start it back up, they spin it normally. From my personal experience, it turns itself off. It resets itself. But I probably started 4 or 5 times, but I'm just going to leave it alone, because when I get it home here, Monday, Tuesday, we're going to, whenever these struts show up, Monday or Tuesday, we're going to get it worked on. I need some suggestions, by the way. My wife's birthday is the 1st of August. The 1st of August, 2002, was the day I rode my helicopter into the Gulf with an engine failure. And if anybody's rambunctious, if you go at ntsb.gov and put in the tail number November N25GH25 Golf Hotel, you can find the incident. It's in there, when I rode into the water. But that was my wife's birthday present. Happy birthday. But I need some suggestions, because I got to do something for her. I didn't think I was going to be home. We're going to be meeting in New York this the back half of next month, and we're going to go hang out at the family farm. And I was going to drive nonstop till then, but then the van started giving me grief, and I said, I got to get it home. So, since I'm going to be home, I might as well get it worked on and hang out with her. Have you been made aware of the latest celebrity to pass away? It seems like a daily thing now. Hulk Hogan, yeah, that was in the news. Well, it's been good, but my friend Daniel's a 7. Oh, gotta eat. I understood. Give her to pass the flowers and candy. Guess What the heck is this guy doing? Oh, they're beating the hell out of somebody on the side of the road. Oh, that was cool. Wow. We're way past the flowers again. Yeah, we've been married for decades. I've been married to her for a long time. Mine's the latest in the celebrity death list. Cleo Lane. I don't know that name. Who's that? It's like every day somebody's dropped dead in the last half a week. So who's Cleo Lane? Oh, this is ridiculous.
Westbound long dog, down the four-wheeler, westbound long dog.
Yeah, we saw that. Yeah, I don't know that name. Tell her you love her. I do on a regular basis. My wife and I are one of those weird couples that actually like to hang out together and actually enjoy each other's company. I know a lot of married couples that tolerate each other. My wife and I actually get along weird, and she is the greatest wife in the world. If for no other reason, when I come up with a really, really, really bad idea, she supports it. I mean, what else can a guy ask for? Jazz singer, musician. Okay, yeah, it's fine in here. I come up with something stupid, she's like, game on, let's do it. I mean, why? You're trying to live your life and have fun. Why do you have to have a voice of reason? Starting in 2019, I rolled out of bed and I said, wife, I want to go do the Cannonball run. She said, okay, plan it. So I did. She was supportive. How many wives would support somebody doing something that stupid? That's what you tell her. Greatest wife on the board. She is. She knows it. She knows it. I am so far inside my wife's head, I answer questions she hasn't even asked me because I know she's going to ask it. So I'll be looking at someone, I'll answer the question that she didn't ask, and she'll, okay, thanks, because I knew it was coming. I buy an overwhelming percentage of her clothes because I know her style and her fashion choices. And I can actually buy clothes for my wife because I know how she wears clothes and what she looks for in clothing, which is weird, but that's how far I can do it. I don't drink coffee, but I make hers, and I make it better than she can make it, and she can't figure out why. Yeah, but she's awesome. If you look at my videos on here, she's in some of them, but she's usually standing behind me or sitting next to me, and when I start popping off and telling jokes and acting stupid, I don't warn her what I'm about to do. So the reaction I get out of her is sincere. And sometimes I blindside her when she's saying something that has a double innuendo, and I'll be filming her, asking her questions, and she's answering, and she's not realizing what she's saying, and I'll film her and then throw it out there. And I find all kinds of crap to say in her presence to get a reaction that I'm sitting on, because I can't do it without her being here. But now that I'm headed home, I can start using it. Angus Young will be next for the AC/DC. He's like 80. Jan Ellis, he did yesterday. You have New York to California Cannonball run? Yep. And Angus Young is actually only about 70. He just looks like he's 95 years old. Do you have any knowledge of modern day Cannonball records out of curiosity, Mr. Steven? Some people keep up on that, some people don't. If you know where the list is, let's see, do I have a turn coming up? Hold on a second. No, okay. You're freaking drunk? That was quick. All right, quick Cannonball history. I gotta Rocks Road here. What is this turn coming up? I'm on 172. I'm going that way. Okay, hold on a second. Hold on, 172 west? South, no. Which one of these am I supposed to go on? Cannonball. Okay, I'm on the right one. Hold on a second. I gotta follow this road and I can get back looking at this. I can't split my attention really good. Okay, real background of the Cannonball Run started in 1971. It was a protest against the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. And the guys that did it found out the last person to claim a record was a dude named Irwin Cannonball Baker back in 1930-something. It was, I don't know, it took them forever to do the run. Have a great trip. What's your thoughts on Carter's targeting of Special Forces soldiers? That sounds crazy. I don't even know what that means. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. But back to the Cannonball real quick while I'm staring out the window. The guy's name was Brock Yates, and he wrote about it because they did it. Him and another guy did it in a Ferrari something, and they took them 35 hours and change. And they decided to call it the Irwin Cannonball Baker Sea to Shining Sea Memorial Trophy Ash is what they called it. And then he wrote about it. He was a writer for like Car or something like that. They made the route from their headquarters in Lower Manhattan Island, and they decided to make it as far as they could. And it was Redondo Beach, California. There's a marina out there called the Portofino, and they made that the finish line officially for their thing. Okay, and it wrote up in the magazine, and it started a firestorm of interest. And if you can remember the 1970s, there was a really strong anti-government, anti-establishment mindset in the country. So this was putting a stick in the eye of the government. So in 1972, they did a race with like 40 teams. They spread them out because it's a timed event. It's not a side-by-side race. And then it became popular, okay, and then they did it again in 1975, and then in 1979 was the last official Cannonball, and there were so many teams, they couldn't fit them in New York City, so they went straight north to Darien, Connecticut, and they started out in a shopping center and did it from there. And at that point, the police knew about it, Highway Patrol knew about it, so it kind of got shut down, and there was a liability issue, so they quit doing it. And then in the early 2000s, there's a dude who is kind of the hub that keeps an eye on Cannonball records. His name is Ed Bolian. He's got a website called VIN number, VinWiki. He's kind of the guy that's the center post of this. And two guys got in a BMW and made the Cannonball route, just them, nobody else. Timed it, had witnesses, proved they did it, and they did it in 32 something. And that was like the new world record. And they were like, everybody was like, oh wow. So suddenly Cannonball in the year 2004 was alive. In 2006, a guy named Alex Roy and another dude, some German guy, did a run in another BMW, and they did it, a team run, and they did it 31 hours and 4 minutes. And this guy made the news. He made the circuit. He was on TV. He was everywhere. Alex Roy was his name. And somebody declared that was the end of Cannonballing because nobody is ever going to beat that time. That is the fastest time. There's too much urban sprawl, too many cars on the road, and that. Well, anyway, a few years after that, Ed Bolian got out there with his group of guys in 2013. Hold on a sec, reading. That was apparently my buddy in the Bouncy Road. He's from Charlotte, New York. I watched the movie and never knew any of it. Yeah, you're talking Alex Roy? He did it in 3104, and then Ed Bolian put a team together in 2013, an older Mercedes, and the goal of the Cannonball, there are so many variables that you cannot account for. And they had a perfect run. They did it in 28 hours and 50 minutes. And the consensus was it is not physically possible to break 30 hours. Well, they did 28:50. And then he held the overall record for the longest. And right before COVID, a guy in Kansas, out of Cleveland, named Doug Tabbitt, and a couple other guys did a 27:25 in a Mercedes also. Just incredible time. They had spotters and everything. And then COVID hit. Well, let me back up a step. That's a team run, and then you have solo. Solo is you're in a car by yourself. Okay, so you don't have any relief. You get to stay awake. And the solo record was 35 something for years and years and years. And then a guy, his name was David Knight, set it in 33 was the solo record. Days, I put 7,000 miles on it. It cost me $349. I didn't tell him I drilled holes in the trunk to hold my fuel tank. And I did it in 34 hours and 4 minutes, so I broke the solo record by 29 minutes. And then a couple of weeks later is when COVID hit. And when COVID hit, how the hell do you drive solo for 30? It was 34 hours. I can tell you that process in a second. But what happened was COVID hit, and all the cars disappeared off the road, and the police, and everybody and their brother did a cannonball with no police on the road and no cars. And the biggest problem is literally the cars. It's not the police. And they were breaking the record all over the place. And one guy did a run and faked his time. There was one dude who left a real black eye on the community. But Doug Tabbitt went out there with an Audi, and they made it look like a Ford Taurus or something, and they did a 25 something. Just his average speed, not moving, average speed was 110 miles an hour, including fuel stops. Absolutely nuts. But there were no cars on the road and no police. It was a wide open road. So you have three categories of cannonball. You have the 1970s, which there's things that make it harder and easier back then. You have the 2000s, and then you have COVID. COVID's its own category. I held the solo record until the tail end of last year when some guy in a BMW broke it. Pretty handily. But I held it for about 4 years. I got a cute little plaque. You know what you get for it? A cute little plaque. Yeah, my time was 34 hours and 4 minutes, and my overall average was 83, and a Volkswagen Bug, which I've owned a fleet of them, and I'm a big-time Bug fan. A Volkswagen Bug will do 130 miles an hour, and I found out the hard way, this car had a governor, it wouldn't go over 115. I didn't know that till I was on my way to New York. And that sucked, but it kept me limited. But what was bizarre is I did a podcast about it. Doug Tabbitt, the guy that holds the big record, yeah, he did it. If you go on my playlist, on my page here, look up my playlist called Cannonball. And it's everything I have is I had a GoPro camera that failed on me. I only have very little footage. But if you go onto my playlist, you'll see Cannonball. And on there is, I think, the link to the podcast. It's a picture of me standing in front of it's a red background standing in front of the car. It was some promo they put out. And I look at the video. I was way heavier back then, like way heavier. I don't know how that happened, but I'm the chubby guy in the green shirt. But I have a little bit of dashboard video looking out, and I have the GoPro that survived, and I have one video looking out the front of the car, one or two. Yeah, the Cannonball run's a real thing. I mean, yeah, it was a comedy movie, but it's a real thing. And the thing is, it's still going on. It's just underground. You have to know where to go. There's not like a one-stop shop where you can find information about it. But it's still going on. And honestly, at this point, I don't think there's a whole lot of room left to break any more records. You could go out there and get a great time. But as far as breaking a record, I think we've kind of run out of room at this point. But for about 4 years, I owned the solo record. And like I said, what do you get for it? Nothing. I did it. I did get a speeding ticket. I got away with that. That was fun. It was just something to do. I was 50 years old at the time. And it's just one of those bucket list things. I didn't get pulled over. I've actually never had a speeding ticket in my life. And I drove from New York City to Redondo Beach as fast as that little car would carry me. And it's not something you do on a whim. Doing a cannonball, you need to sit down and do your research. You need to know what you're up against and where you can do what and what time of the day you get to where, and what city you're cutting through at what time so you miss traffic, and there's a lot to it. Let's see here. Whoa. Okay. Looks like I lost everybody. I'll let this run a few more minutes and I'm going to bail off. Well, heck, I'll just do it now. Hey, if anybody 26 minutes is time.